You're listening to Tapestry, a podcast by a music lover for music lovers. I'm your host, Kelly. Music is a thread that weaves a course throughout our lives. Join me on a journey to unravel that thread and bring you the stories behind what inspires musicians to create. Side note, Tapestry is an uncensored podcast. Don't say I didn't warn you. Thank you for joining me, everybody, for what will hopefully be an exciting episode of Tapestry number 58. So, I'm breaking from the norm a little bit with the show for this particular episode, and that's because this episode is sort of a podcast swap. So, Jacob Waller, our guest today, is also a podcast host. He hosts a show called Underrated, Overhated, and I was actually on his show earlier in the year, and so this is kind of a I'll scratch my back, you scratch yours kind of deal. But it ended up leading to a very interesting and fun discussion where, unlike my other interviews, yes, I do ask him many questions, but we actually sit down and listen to a couple songs together. So I ended up getting his opinion on a couple of my favorite tunes, and we kind of sort of have a Socratic seminar on why we think we like these songs, why we think we don't like these songs. So if you'd really like to hear me blather on about certain musical tropes and themes and sounds, please do tune in. This is a pretty long one, but I would say we had a pretty organic discussion, and if there's any episode that's going to get me a copyright strike, it's going to be this one, because I did leave the snippets of audio in, hoping that it's kind of understandable that it's for educational and entertainment purposes. But without further ado, here's a little snippet of my guest Jacob Waller's own music, and then we will get on with the discussion. Jacob and so I was on your podcast, Underrated, Overhated, and this is kind of a follow-up to that podcast, but it's going to be different than normal, where I just straight, long-form interview you, because we're going to do a little bit on this episode today where you kind of do like a live reaction to music I like, because that's essentially what I did on your show. So this might not sound like other Tapestry interviews. So, but before I stray too far from the course, why don't you introduce yourself and tell me a little bit about both your podcast and your own musical history.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. Hello. Thanks for having me. I'm Jacob. So online, I'm BigYellowPraxis. That's my YouTube page, my Instagram and Twitter and all that kind of stuff. And I do a podcast about underrated music, hence the name, Underrated, Overhated. And I host that obviously just on all the usual places as well as YouTube. I also do video essays, which is relatively new. I've only started doing that in the last month. And I
didn't know you're doing those.
Yeah, that's where I got my hate from, which we can talk about later.
Okay.
I got some hate regarding one of them. And I also do my own musical stuff. I write songs. I'm in a band. We're kind of a Americana folky country band. I don't know how to describe us quite. We all have a few different influences. And then my own music, I do, guitar lessons on YouTube a bit. I've done 1 or 2 songwriting lessons. And the music I write tends to be I guess I'd call it progressive folk for the most part. So yeah, it's a complete random bag of things, but the theme is music. So there is a uniting theme.
Perfect. Yeah. What is the name of that Americana folk project again?
Oh, so we're called Between the Breaks. We're not very big, and we weren't together very long before, maybe a year or so before lockdown. And obviously we started having gigs and stuff like that, and then lockdown came and put an end to all that. But we're Between the Breaks, and we're Bristol-based, Bristol in the UK. And it's cool. We all write songs, but we all come at it from quite different angles. One is very lyrics oriented, and one of them is a singer. Well, they're all singers other than me, whereas I'm a lot more from a progressive folky trad folk kind of background, and someone else is a bit more country, and it's kind of a cool mix. Yeah, we're all over the place.
Well, you play banjo as well, right?
Yes, yeah, yeah. So I play
Yes.
banjo, and I play like in the band. I tend to just play banjo and slide guitar. So that's quite country-ish already, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, and it's also funny. Like I think as an American, hearing a British person talking about being in an Americana band, that is kind of
Hmm.
funny. But it is a genre, really. I can't say I know what separates it from other forms of folk and bluegrass, but
Hmm.
I don't know if that's worth mentioning. If you can enlighten me on that.
Yes, I think it's a good question because country, I guess, country's a genre. I'm not big into country. There's some like classic country I like. Who doesn't like Dolly Parton or Johnny Cash or something like that?
Right.
I'm not trying to offend country, but these days, I think it's probably got more of a negative perception as kind of like a guy who sings about beer, women, and driving a pickup truck. Um,
Right.
Whereas I think Americana encapsulates, everything from like the band and Bob Dylan, obviously, through to, I guess, like the Dire Straits feel very Americana to me, even though they're a British band. Like they're very country rock, I guess. So I think it's just Americana is just cooler country in a way, and I'm not trying to, diss country, but I think it's what you say you play when you play country-ish music, but you don't want to say you play country. So that's why I quite often
Interesting.
say Americana.
Well, yeah, I think maybe like Americana. I really should like pull up Wikipedia before I embarrass myself. But I would kind of imagine Americana lends itself to describe the types of artists who are writing more like homespun, kind of tale oriented, from the heartland sort of stories. Whereas what you were describing is kind of like at least what we in the States here would call like radio country. Florida
Hmm.
Georgia Line and Riley Green and all the
Yeah,
women,
yeah,
beer, and trucks type of stuff. Not that, I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
I enjoy a huge amount of that, but some of it is just so intensely commercialized and generic
Yes,
that you
yeah,
have
yeah.
to wonder, like, oh, okay. Like radio country bingo. Will they talk about a divorce, a breakup, getting drunk, having a party, fishing,
Hmm.
mud on the tires, whatever. So, and actually, I saw that your last episode on your show was about trying to understand if Tennessee Whiskey by Chris Stapleton was a ripoff, which I found very interesting. And then I had to remind myself, yeah, he's in a folk-ish band. That would make
Yes,
sense.
yeah,
Which is even
yeah.
weirder because I actually just found Chris Stapleton very recently, and
Right,
I
yeah, yeah,
really enjoy his stuff.
yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't listen to the episode all the way through, but what was the conclusion to that?
So that is that is an example of one of my video essays. So that's like the third one I've done, and it's a new thing
Got
I'm
it.
doing. And because I'm not, my podcasts are always talking to someone else. It's still kind of a podcast, but the video format, the video essay format, I throw a few silly jokes in there, basically.
Yeah.
um, I don't know. I think my general attitude towards it is, when it comes to a question of a rip-off, generally kind of who cares to some extent. Obviously, ripping off someone else is bad in a way, so I don't want to like sidestep that. But everyone, like the Beatles, Bob Dylan, everyone has ripped people off. Like Bob, Don't Think Twice, It's All Right, Bob Dylan is, 80%, I'm putting a random number on it, but a large portion of that melody is just taken from someone else. That's just what people do. And
Hmm.
I don't think it's that big a deal. So yeah, you'll have to watch the video essay. There's kind of a long and interesting story about Tennessee Whiskey and the way it fits in with I'd Rather Go Blind, which is the song it sounds a lot like, but it has different lyrics to, and the lyrics are from somewhere else. It's
And who's the original by?
So I'd Rather Go Blind is by I've forgotten her name now. Yeah, it's Etta James. There we go. I was going to say Betty James for a second, but it's Etta James.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, musically it's very similar, but the lyrics are from somewhere else, and the song is credited to the people who wrote the lyrics. But then the people who wrote the music don't get credited. So it's not a rip-off because he's not taking the credit for himself. I've completely like ruined the premise and the answer that I get to in my video essay. So people should still watch it. but
Yes, yes, please go watch it. Yeah, and see, I want to go watch it as a video essay format because, yeah, primarily the underrated, overhated show. It is an audio format. Obviously, I was on your show,
mhm.
and it's like you don't need the video component of it. But I think with YouTube being the way it is still, and like YouTube creators really bleeding over into other social media avenues, like Adam Neely, Rob Beato, all
Mhm.
those types of guys. why not? Like, why not make video essays?
Hmm.
Because even the really, really long form ones, like people complain about, oh, we all have zero attention spans these days, which is true. But I almost feel like there's two entirely separate ends of the spectrum. You have the TikTok quick
Hmm.
hit entertainment, little bite sized things, and then you have the I'm going to explain for 30 minutes everything I know about this artist, this music, blah blah blah.
Hmm.
I can see the need for both. I think
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
certain topics must be handled. You
Yes,
couldn't
yeah.
possibly discuss why you think Chris Stapleton ripped someone off in a 30-second video. You just couldn't do it.
Exactly, yeah. So but it's interesting you said, why wouldn't you do a video essay? I have one good reason why you wouldn't do it. Because it takes so long to edit, like unbelievably. So, I mean, I can't, I'm not a professional video editor or anything like that. So I can't pretend to be amazing at it anyway. But for a 20-minute video, it can take 6 hours to edit all that.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
yeah, it could take a long time. So I'm thinking of just having to put like, some people are just recording themselves talking and just have that as part of the video,
Hmm.
which takes up some of the space because I'm having to think of like a little image or a little pun to do with pretty much everything I'm saying to cover the video space, which is why it takes so long. So yeah, that's the main reason why you wouldn't do it.
Wow. Yeah, it's I have a lot of respect for people who can do that kind of as an art form. Like again, Adam Neely always
Hmm.
has, he has his face recording him speaking, but then he always goes into little clips and pictures of the sheet music, and I mean I just cannot imagine how long that stuff takes him to
It
do,
can
and the
take a long
result is
time.
always so
Yeah.
worth it. So but back to the podcast, that's obviously how we kind of found each other, and I think the idea of your show is a great one, and it was fun to be a part of that and get people's kind of unfiltered opinions on something they're hearing for the first time. But how did Underrated Overhated come to be? And what's your favorite part about it? Why do you still do it?
To answer the second question first, I have no idea why I keep doing it. It's one of those things. I don't know. Like sometimes you feel a bit annoyed because not more people don't watch or listen or whatever, and you're like, why am I doing this? But actually, at the
Yeah.
end of the day, it's not the end of the world, and I'm making progress with it. But why did I start doing it? It's really weird. I don't really know. I kind of do things on a bit of a whim sometimes, and I just had the whimsical idea I would do it, and then once I usually get an idea, I do tend to actually stick to it. Which I just thought I would do it. I've always done music stuff, and I thought, well, what am I doing? I'm in a band. I kind of occasionally write songs and try to get it recorded, but what am I going to do with them? In the band, they've all got the rest of the band all have kids, so they're not always able to dedicate as much time as I have. So, like, what am I actually doing? I may as well actually do something, and I can talk about and like put my ideas together and just do something with that. Talking about well, music specifically. So it was all part of that. And I think I just thought, may as well just do it and just do a thing rather than just kind of
Right.
playing guitar in my bedroom and being in a bit of a band sometimes, and not really getting where I want to with it. And may as well actually give it a proper shot before giving up.
That's fair. Did you or do you have like a close group of friends that you were always talking about music and musical opinions with already?
Yeah, it's more like I have a bunch of different individuals who I talk to. I guess there's never been like, I guess like in the band we do talk a bit, but it's weird because yeah, like this is kind of a distraction, but like every time you talk to someone about art, you talk to them in a different way about it, if that makes sense. So talking in a big group of people is always a bit weird because everyone talks about it differently, if that makes sense. So so this is why my podcast is usually one-on-one. I tend not to have more than a couple of people because
Oh,
um,
okay, I see.
we all come at it from like very different points of view. Sorry, it's a bit of an obtuse point I'm trying to make, but because I did English at uni, so everyone
Oh,
always,
okay.
yeah. So that was my undergrad. So everyone always, I'm used to being around people who talk about art. So everyone who I'm friends with, especially from uni, are very good at talking about art and are very much into music. But they're all into it in very different ways and from different points of view, and it's kind of yeah. I commit. It's hard to explain because I play music and always, well, not always have, but have for a very long time. I think I talk about it quite differently to the way that other English students that I went to uni did,
Hmm.
who I'm like, weirdly for an English student, I'm not really into lyrics that much. So quite often there's a few friends from uni who are like, oh, I really love this song. And I'm just like, I don't hear it whatsoever. I'm just not really getting it. And it's all about like the lyrics. So like good examples are like Leonard Cohen's type stuff, which I like, but don't love. But that's Leonard Cohen's huge for English students because his lyrics are great. And I'm like a bit of a Philistine. And I'm like,
that's kind of
okay.
fascinating though. Yeah.
And I'm like, it's kind of okay. So I don't know. It's kind of, again, I'm kind of rambling, but it's kind of the experience of just when you start off, I just get all my friends on, and after a few months, I started getting on other podcasters and stuff like that, like you. But when you first start getting your friends on, you just realize you're coming at things very differently, and these people you've been friends with all this time, you start actually understanding how they think about things. And I can send them a song that I think is great, and they'll just be like, what is wrong with you? This song is weird. It's bizarre. It's crazy. It's terrible. And I just think, hey, I thought this person had good taste, and they're shitting all over my favorite music.
That's that's kind of what we're leading up to once we get into the playlist portion of this. But yeah, I found the same thing as I started my own show. Like, I remember my very second episode was with my very good friend Katie, and she and I have practically the most opposite music taste ever. She's into like Beatles and like proto punk and really rough around the edges acoustic stuff, murder ballads. Like, I think one of her favorite albums is Piper at the Gates of Dawn, and I'm like, if I tried to listen to this, I would not survive. Like, this is just not my thing. And I'm thinking, but we're such good friends and our personalities just work together. I'm like, how can she and I have such different values when it comes to what we appreciate in art and music and still get along? Yeah. But that's the beauty of it, I think. You might have your best friend, like you might be into classical and your best friend only listens to ambient drone, and you somehow find a way to make it work.
I feel like part of the key to that is having a sense of humor about it, because, and this is linked to someone being offended at one of my video essays. So I did a video essay recently.
This Dire Straits guy?
Yeah, it was about a Dire Straits song that I really love called Brothers in Arms. And in the video essay, I basically say, look, are the Dire Straits the most boring band of all time? Like, are they the least cool band that one could possibly admit to loving? And I say yes. I think we all agree. And anyway, this guy clearly watched the first 5 seconds or whatever, saw that, and just noped out and just wrote this tirade on Facebook about how I'm just some kid, some whippersnapper.
Yeah, and I have this saved, and I would like to narrate it for everyone. So this will be, after almost 60 episodes, my first on-air roast. But I was questioning what accent to read this in, because I really can't tell what this guy is or what he's about. But he just strikes me as this little smarmy dude who, you're right, he clearly didn't listen to more than 2 minutes of your essay. But the roast is as follows. The kid who hosts this so-called podcast is a clueless idiot. He wouldn't know musicianship if it bit him on his Gen X ass. Are Dire Straits folk? No, but Mark Knopfler is profoundly influenced by Celtic music and folk melodies. He's written soundtracks for movies like Cal and A Shot at Glory, which prominently feature Irish and Scottish overtones. Brothers in Arms likewise. The kid is allowed to say what he does because he was born in the 90s? Kiss my ass, punk, and listen to something besides Bieber and Ed Sheeran, which that just kills me, because if he has seen any of the episodes you've done or any of the things you've listened to, like, here's the list of influences that you gave me when I asked you to come on this show. Mike Oldfield, Kate Bush, Beach Boys, Joni Mitchell, Yes, Graf Generator, Stevie Wonder. None of those things have they are not in any way musically approximate to Ed Sheeran or Justin Bieber. So congratulations, stupid Facebook commenter, you have made it big.
I'm like the very epitome of like, well, not quite, because I don't think I'm a dickhead, but I'm almost the very epitome of, the wrong generation.
Yeah,
it's a subreddit. Yes. It's like, it's the music I tend to like. So that's just, but because it kind of comes back to my point, because I'm irreverent about it. And I think it's a key part to liking anything. I don't know, personally. It does seem to annoy people. Even, one of the subreddits I'm most on is called Beach Boys Circle Jerk. And, they're one of my favorite bands. But basically, they're just mocking the band the entire time. And it's funny because I think anyone's favorite bands should be mocked a little bit because they're silly. It doesn't matter who they are. I don't know. I think it's a kind of light-hearted, and this is what my video is about. It's about the Dire Straits being boring, but it's a great song, and it's actually great partly because it is a bit boring and because it takes its time so much and it's really slow and atmospheric, and it's kind of weird. It doesn't fit alongside kind of 80s synth pop, but it has a lot of the production and style of like 80s synth pop. It's a weird song in spite of it sounding on the surface of it quite boring. It's quite strange. And I don't know, because my approach to these video essays is a bit irreverent. I do think sometimes I might have a bit of an uphill struggle trying to get some people to watch it, but they're probably never going to like it anyway, so it's fine.
Yeah, I think some people can get the wrong idea. Like if you as a person or me or anybody has a really strong stance on something that maybe the rest of the world doesn't think they ought to. Like I definitely noticed that, like looking back through your episodes and obviously talking to you now. Yeah, your music taste is kind of transplanted to a different time. Like I think you're close to my same age and your music style is like 30 years prior. So
yeah, it's weird.
There's nothing wrong with that. And people get this idea that they're like, well, what, are you just doing that for attention? Or are you, and I'm like, no, I mean, certain things click with different ears. Like I've felt almost like shame and guilt over the past couple years because I must be really sensitive to production quality. And I kind of have this bad reputation as like closed-minded because certain stuff from like the pre-MP3 era, I'm just like, it just sounds old. I don't like it. It's old. And then as I started to break from that, I was able to find little gems kind of from the 80s and 70s, but it's never going to be my thing. Like, it's just not what I grew up with. And that's fine. It's fine for you to listen to Graf Generator, aka your favorite band, I believe.
But it's interesting you bring up the production point because that's what I found like listening to your songs. I was just like, this production is just not what I'm used to. I find it
too much,
odd.
Probably.
But is it too much? Sometimes I really struggle to. Maybe this is us getting into the songs, but I really struggle to put into words what my problem with it is, and it's very hard to pin it down, isn't it? It's like, well, it's just a taste thing. Like for example, we all have like a food we don't like. And we can sit there and be like, oh, it's because it's whatever. It's too salty or it's too sweet but ultimately we just have to like ultimately say because it's icky. There's no other answer. Yeah. And it's just, I really struggled. And a few weeks ago, we my partner and I, we had some friends around and one of them put a song on and I hated it. And I was just like, I wasn't a dick about it, but I was like, oh, I hate this. I don't know. And I was sitting there trying to work it out. And I listened to it the day after as well. I was like really trying to like intensely, like, why do I hate this so much? And there's just something about the production of it. It was like a 90s jungle remix of like a Fugees song.
Oh God.
So like, it's just not my style of music anyway, but I was just listening to it. I was like, but what is it specifically that I hate? Because, maybe I don't understand why I would hate it so much. And I was really trying to like analyze my emotional reaction to it. And I was like, yeah, I think it's boring. It doesn't interest me, but it goes further. I hate it. Why do I hate it? And ultimately I was like, I can give these like answers that are approximate, guessing at what I really think. I was trying to intellectualize it, but I was like, no, ultimately I just think it's icky. I just think it's icky. Ooh, go away.
Yeah. I've said this on the show before. I have a really close friend here near where I live, who she and her husband are both like into, a lot of like alternative rock stuff. They love Tool. They love a lot of kind of stuff that was really popular on the radio in the 90s and early 2000s. And they always kind of lightly make fun of me. They're like, oh, you and your prog, sometimes I just want to go caveman mode and just put a song on that I have a visceral reaction to and not have to think about like, ooh, well, what's Danny Carey playing here? Is it in 7/8? Is it 15/16? Like, that's not what my brain is going through when I'm listening to complex music. Not at all. I just think it's interesting. But sometimes why analyze it? But now that you told me you were an English lit major, that probably makes a lot of sense. Do you find yourself doing that in other areas of your life? Like someone cuts you off in traffic and you're like, I wonder why you did that.
I'm very chilled out on the roads, I have to say, because I'm very prone to cutting in front of other people. I'm a bit cheeky on the road. I'm very forgiving usually of other people. I don't get annoyed at all. Sometimes I'll be like, interesting choice. Do you know what I mean? But I don't get particularly analytical with that. No. I think I probably do with like I'm really into food and cooking, so I probably do get quite like I need to be, I have very specific ideas of what I want, and I need to I like to make sure I've got it right and I understand why things have happened. So it depends. Certain things I definitely get but like you, I don't listen to, I loved progressive rock as soon as I heard it when I was like 13 or 14. And my immediate reaction wasn't like analytical. It was very much just like, oh, this is cool. This is like wacky. And this is possibly the difference between like first generation or whatever 70s progressive rock and later. Like my first thought is like, this is wacky and psychedelic and just like weird, potentially weird for the sake of weird. Whereas I think newer stuff is less whimsical or whatever, and it has a different. It's similar in many ways, but it's just that difference. There's a difference of tones sometimes, isn't there? And I think
I don't know how our brains evolve to pick up on that, but it's very apparent to me. Like when I was on your show and you had me listen to some Graf Generator songs. To anyone listening who doesn't know Graf Generator, they were a band formed in the late 60s, English prog rock band. They're very, like, as you would say, very whimsical, very goofy and just kind of strange, very musically, I don't know, eclectic,
but
and
very dark at the same time. Like it's weird that they can be very what's the word? Flamboyant and like very like dark. It's kind of it's a weird combination, but they're a bit much, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah, it was a lot to take, and like they didn't really have a lot of commercial success in England. Didn't they kind of offshoot into the Italian prog world for a while?
Yeah,
they were
A
loved.
few albums were huge in Italy, weirdly.
Strange, but that kind of stuff, like when I listened to that on your show, I just immediately, I was intrigued, but not in the good, like, oh, I want more way. It was more like the, what are they doing here? Like, why are they making this choice? Like, this is just odd. But then the more I thought about it, I'm like, it's really no different than anyone who puts out some kind of shock value sort of song now. It's just the way we consume media nowadays is different. You now have these massive music video productions where you can, like the Graf Generator song you had me listen to. I don't remember the titles, but the one where he's like waking up in the camp and there's like this weird carnival-esque theme to it. And there's some just strange story being told. I thought, imagine them trying to make a music video to that in the 70s. They could do it now and you'd have the visual backup to give context to what they're trying to tell the listener. But back then it was just like, all right, I'm going to pick up this record at the store and drop it down and hope I like it. And then you get home and you're like, what the actual hell am I listening to?
Yeah. It's funny because when I play it, I mean, I tend not to because she hates it. But when I play it for my partner, the Graf Generator, she just goes, this just makes me anxious. Like, what? Why is this a thing? And I was like, yeah, it doesn't have that reaction on me at all. I just think it's like theatrical and like noisy and weird and whatnot. But I totally get it at the same time. Like I totally understand it.
Yeah. And like you said, like some people, they can't, they don't have a reason. There is no reason why they don't like broccoli. They just gave it a shot and they just don't like broccoli. It's sometimes it's like, keep it simple, stupid. There it is. Yeah. But in the interest of doing the exact opposite of that, I would say now's probably a good time to do our listening portion of the episode. And remind me, did you went and listened to all 4 songs all the way through, right? Before? Okay. Yes. So this isn't a blind reaction, but it may have been a while since you listened. So I'll read this off for listeners. So what I did for Jacob here was I had given him a playlist of 4 songs that to me are 4 really important songs that summarize, like if I could pretty much sum up my music taste and what I value in music and in a listening experience, I picked 4 songs. And those 4 songs would be, it'll be artist album. So, or artist title album. So Imogen Heap, Closing In from 2005, Speak for Yourself, my favorite album of all time. Circa Survive, Through the Desert Alone, off Blue Sky Noise from 2010. Protest the Hero, Tapestry, which was the reason I named this podcast Tapestry from their album.
Thought it might be.
Yeah, from Scurrilous in 2011. And then kind of my current favorite band, Catatonia, Forsaker, off Night is the New Day from 2009. I would say all 4 of these albums are easily in like my little pantheon of albums I could throw on at any time, any day. But I wanted to give you, as the guest, kind of like the most varied sampling of as weird and as chill as my listening gets. So that's the order I have them in. So why don't we do this? We will do a little re-listen of probably cut off after a minute and a half or something of each song, and I'll get your thoughts. Sound
Nice.
good?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, perfect.
I can't wait to be with you. No, I just can't sit still. Are we there? Takes me back. I remember such a magical place. It was all you. Closing in. I hope that you make it. Closing in. I hope that you find your way.
I'm going to pause here. That's probably enough of a sample to get to remind you of the feel of that track. Though I
Yes,
will
yeah.
say the bridge of that song has my favorite parts lyrically, which I can go over. But in general, go ahead and roast my musical taste.
It's interesting you point the bridge. I think the bridge is the best bit of the song, but the whole song, like, I mean, it's not the style of music I listen to at all, but it really works, and I have tons of thoughts about it. I guess the first one is you listen to it, it's like, I think it's cinematic. I think it works in some kind of. I feel like it would work really well in a kind of cyberpunk film or something like that.
Yeah.
It feels futuristic, and it feels futuristic in a way that it feels very 2005 futuristic in a way. Like you can tell it's from like the early noughties, but at the same time, it doesn't sound dated like a lot of, well, music. It's crazy to think that 2005 is 16 years ago, firstly.
God.
But you know what I mean? It sounds of its time without that being a bad thing. Because I don't think that's an inherently bad thing to say, because, you know, Bach or Beethoven sounds of its time. Like, that's not an insult,
Right.
but it sounds
Right.
of its time. And it feels very like cinematic. It's got this kind of good sense of like motion and trajectory, I guess, to it immediately. And it's the kind of thing, because, yeah, how would I describe it? It's almost like a deconstructed pop song.
That's a great way to describe, honestly, so much of Imogen Heap's music. Maybe that's why I like it, because it has pop tropes and electronic tropes, but they never feel wholly of their parts. She can take like the best elements of all of those and smush them together. And, like, I don't know how much you know about her as an artist, but I think a huge part of my respect for her is the fact that she does all of her own production and, for the most part, programming and stuff. I mean, she's just a damn genius, I think. And I think if anyone else were to take her music that she wrote and try to put it together, it just wouldn't sound like her. It's the combination of all those things.
Yeah, no, I get that vibe. It's weird because she's a name I've heard, and, you know, she's British, and I've heard her talked about by people a lot in Britain, but I don't think I'd ever listened to any of her music until you sent me this. Maybe I had unconsciously or not knowing.
I'm sure you've heard Hide and Seek, which is her big hit.
Yes, I have.
It's kind of a meme at this point, but it's beautiful in its kind of rawness and its stripped backness, because it's really just her using a vocoder. There's no percussion, there's no piano, nothing. It's just her voice. That's it.
Which is, so yeah, I was gonna say that's super intense to do that. But I found this interesting that you chose this, because it's obviously very different to progressive metal and stuff like that. But at the same time, there's a lot of instrumental and vocal intensity to it.
Mm-hmm.
So it feels like it's not a million miles away, even though it's a million miles away from the other stuff on this list, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and you know, thinking about how like what we just came from topic wise, where I'm like, do you have a tendency to overanalyze a lot of things in your life? Because I know I do, and maybe from being an artist myself and a musician myself, that's just what creative people do. We kind of want to turn the focus on like we want to see how we feel about things in what other people create. And
Mm-hmm.
when I chose these 4 songs, I really just chose 4 off the cuff songs I really enjoy. But then, of
Mm-hmm.
course, in typical fashion, I get to the end and I have all the lyrics splayed out, and I'm like, "Ooh, is there like some continuous, truly
Yeah.
tapestry thread running through all these?" As I say in my intro, finally,
Yes.
58 episodes later, I'm getting to the point of my own show. But you know, what is that thread that runs through all 4 of them?
Mm-hmm.
And weirdly enough, I'll talk about it at the end, but I think there is some kind of lyrical and thematic connection between all 4, even though it was
Ah,
totally subconscious. So
yeah. The
kind of
lyrics,
weird.
so the lyrics to this song, I feel are like naive, and again, I don't use that in a pejorative way at all. It's naive in the sense that it's very direct. It's not. They're not artistic in like they're not like, to choose someone, possibly the best example of like wrought or very artsy lyrics is like Bob Dylan. They're not like that. They're very.
Right.
It's kind of. It's not quite conversational, but it almost is. Like, are we there? And these kind of, and that is very. I don't know. It's odd. It's a weird musical mixture of these like naive, straightforward lyrics with this production which is really sophisticated. And I think I've not worked out the chords to this song. I looked it up, but it sounds quite harmonically simple. It's not like, you know, Baroque
Yeah.
key changes, but it's more about the arrangement, which is kind of what you said before. Like someone else covers this, and you don't do this arrangement. You know, it's about the arrangement to some extent, to a large
Yes.
extent, like, and that is. It's a very different skill to someone who is like a good melodist. Like some people are very good at writing a melody. Some people are very good at arranging. And I guess some people are very good at both, but they're still different enough skill sets. And this is, it's not unmelodic at all, but it is, the arrangement is the kind of where her attention feels,
I think
where it
it's the
feels her
meat.
attention has gone.
Yeah, it's the meat of the song, and perhaps that's what I'm drawn to in her. I mean, you paid me a very nice compliment and said that my British accent was pretty good when I
Mm-hmm.
unintentionally kind of let it slip when I did I did a cover of 2-1 by Imogen Heap on my YouTube channel, and the fun I had making that cover was due in part because I could pick out the melody in that song, but then I was like, well, I can't play the instruments that she wrote or all of the instruments she wrote, so I'm going to have to
Mm-hmm.
choose the juiciest bits of what I like in her arrangement and then play it on, you know, I did it on drums, vocal, trombone, and bass. There's not a trombone in that song, but the cello parts kind of led themselves to be a stand-in for brass, and it was like kind of cool hearing what you're saying. You can even get that in shades of this song. It's just like the arrangement is really at the forefront, and if you take
Yes.
one element out of that, it changes the whole feel of the song.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So back to that arrangement and kind of deconstructed pop song. It's not like it's not someone play. Like, there's no single instrument which is playing the chord progression as you would. Like the exact opposite of this is like a folk song where there's like a bloke hacking away at a guitar, like playing the chords at A to B or whatever. Like the chord progression is kind of deconstructed across the instruments because you can hear it change from like a minor chord to a major chord or something like that. But it's not, oh, the piano is playing a minor chord and moves to a
Yeah.
major chord. There's like a riff that's doing this in the bass a bit. And it is, I mean, I don't know what other instruments from there. There's lots of electronic stuff, her own vocals as well. Everything is just, yeah, it's not just, it's very unrock in the way it's arranged, I guess, because everything's disaggregated into its pieces, which is cool. And it's similar to a few things. Not to bring up the Beach Boys as I always do, but like it's a very different type of music. But Brian Wilson does that in a lot of the songwriting. Like he's another person who's all about like the arrangement, very different type of arrangement. But there isn't necessarily this just like one thing which is just signaling the chord changes, or just one thing which is giving the structure. The structure is just all over the place in the
It's
arrangement, and
amorphous, maybe.
it's just a different, it's a very different way of writing songs than just like a traditional rock or pop or folk song or whatever.
I don't know how she does it. And then I've seen her live, and it's like you actually see a real drummer, a real, her playing real keyboards, a real cellist, and I think at least one guitarist. But it's almost like, ooh, this kind of breaks the fantasy for me. Like it was so strange.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
she also has her little glove things that she like uses that's a whole
Oh,
nother
wow.
podcast episode. Yeah, you should really look up Imogen Heap. Just go to YouTube and look up Imogen Heap music gloves. I think they're called Mimu or something, but she literally invented them. Like she worked with I think a Harvard or Yale professor, someone very smart, much smarter than me. And she has these gloves that are like motion activated. So she programmed in all these commands. So live, all the little beeps and boops and the kind of the whooshing sounds and those synths and stuff you hear going on in the background of the song, she can quite literally control them with her hands. So she can do on the spot, pitch modulation and vocoding and crescendo, decrescendo, and she literally is moving her hands. It's so impressive and so cool. And I almost just think like, how do you make an album for consumption that has elements of that you would never know are there? I don't think she had the gloves invented or made yet on this album in 2005, but she's used it on her later stuff and in her live performances. And I just think, how do you distill down all the nuance from a live performance like that into a studio album? I don't know how.
That's crazy.
It's beyond me. But yeah, if you're interested in music technology, definitely look up. I think she did an NPR Tiny Desk concert where she demonstrates them, and she performs some of her songs she kind of has like the non-glove version and the glove version. She can kind of do an adaptation of both. So,
Yeah.
but
again, that's very like cyberpunk.
For sure.
Is this album the album of like 22, 24 or something like that? It sounds like it. I think that's how we'll all be playing music in 100 or 200 years.
Yeah, I mean, you did say that this 2005 album sounded futuristic for 2005, but then she releases an album in 2014 called Sparks. Is it Sparks? Yeah, and I mean, it's just crazy. I don't know how she does what she does, and her musical mind for the organic human connection to music is just unparalleled, I think, in the industry. And I don't know, to me, she's a living legend. She's probably all-time favorite artist. Like if I could only choose one forever, it would be her, because you can listen to a song and, like you said, you could hear all the little individual parts going on, but it's really hard to pinpoint what's there. There's just so much to sink your teeth into sonically that it would be hard to get tired. So before I get tired and you get tired of Imogen Heap, I think we should move to the next song.
Can I just offer one criticism though?
Yeah, yes, you may.
The album cover, I think, is pretty dreadful.
It's pretty bad. Yeah, we can agree on that. It's
Okay.
pretty awful. It's very 2005.
I was gonna say it's very 2000, especially with the kind of all lowercase album name and that kind of black and white. I don't know. I'm not really good at
it. Kind of looks like a MySpace photo.
Yes. Yeah.
But like posterized in Photoshop very badly with a halftone
that's
filter
exactly
on it.
it.
So
Yes. Yeah.
sorry, Emmy, love you, but your designer kind of butchered that one. So in comparison to the next album, Blue Sky Noise, which has very creepy and weird but beautiful album artwork, I think it's like an oil painting of. I've never actually looked at it a lot. I'm gonna look at it right now. I'd never have quite figured out what's going on with this album cover. It's like a half mutilated horse with wings with a rainbow shooting out of its neck, and then it also has like a stomach part with teeth that is like trying to eat this guy's head, who looks kind of like a biblical angel. It's really weird, but
yeah. So it's like a lamprey mouth. You know that fish.
Like, weird suckerfish head thing.
Yeah. But then this guy looks like Caligula or Nero or some kind of Roman emperor. So
Yes.
really, I don't know whether to what, because I've looked at it a bit, but looking at it again, does the lamprey mouth implicitly? It's like a halo, right? It's almost like an olive wreath
I
around
think
his
it's
head.
almost like a saint, like I don't know what you would call it, but some frieze in some Catholic church where they have like an image of Jesus with like the big halo behind his head. It's very bizarre.
It's terrifying.
I kind of love that we're getting into the true English lit and art analysis nature of this episode. So this is going swimmingly. But anyway, next track is going to be Through the Desert Alone by Circus Survive. All right, I'll stop that one there. I just wanted the verse to finish. So I would not blame you if that was your first time hearing Circa Survive, if Anthony Green's voice sounds like nails on an absolute chalkboard to you. But I would be really curious to hear your thoughts, because this, quite frankly, is a band that I couldn't stand when I first listened to their earlier album, Juturna, but somehow they ended up a total classic to me.
So I don't hate the voice, but my first thought was like, wow, like Humans is so diverse, because his voice, he's a dude and I'm a dude,
Yeah.
and I can't sing like that, and 99% of men can't sing like that, and it's just like, what is this? This is, I mean, I don't know. His voice isn't any more weird or horrible than like Geddy Lee from Rush, or
Yeah, that's true.
or like John Anderson from Yes, or like tons of like singers. Like, again, Van der Graf Generator, like he's the weirdest part of it. Peter Hamill's vocals are just like, what the hell is this? This is the kind of like, out of the four you chose, this is the anthemic one. It feels like this is like a kind of stadium rocker almost more. So it's still proggy and
Yeah, there's a lot to this album that there are elements of this song that definitely are kind of smattered across the other offerings on this album. But then they have like a acoustic-y ballad thing towards the end. There's a huge variety on this album, but I would say most of it kind of stays at the level of this track, maybe.
yeah. I think this is the one I kind of found it hardest to comment much on. I definitely don't dislike it, but I don't love it either. I feel it's the same that the issue you have with older stuff. I listen to this, it's like, oh, this sounds very modern, and I don't know why. Something about that kind of, is it clean? Is it super clean and you can hear every detail? I almost don't want to sometimes. It is. I don't know what it is. It sounds very like bullshitty. You know, like people who are like, oh, vinyl's best because blah, blah, blah. I'm not like that. I'm a normal human being who listens to music on Spotify. But I think I think it's weird because I do actually listen to a lot of contemporary music, but it's like contemporary folk or like maybe like some folk and funk. It's all the F genres, and like the band Wolfpack. But I feel like that kind of, if you know Wolfpack at all, they're like a very funk, disco-y kind of instrumental pop band. Sometimes
that makes sense though, because their production is so stripped down. I mean, Wolfpack sounds like they recorded everything on a cassette tape. It's just really gritty. Like you're just, to me, and I like them. Weirdly enough, it kind of sounds like you're just listening to a bunch of dudes jamming in their dad's living room with wood paneling on the walls and an old TV in the corner. Like,
I think, I still think they're quite clean, and there's like a lot of contemporary folk I listen to, which is quite cleanly. But for me personally, I don't think it lends itself as well to rock, which I think I like that kind of grittier, old style. So it's just like there are obvious benefits to modern production, like panning, which like is all over the place in this track in a good way. It's not like random, but it's like it's actually sophisticated, and it's not just. I mean, I hate listening to things in mono. Mono is just the worst. And this is the opposite. You've actually got like a soundscape. It's like the Imogen Heap song closing in. Like it's actually a soundscape, which is so much more interesting.
And you're kind of referring to like the stereo image, right? When you say that, it like if you have a good pair of headphones on, like we both do, when we hear that, you can kind of feel yourself sitting in the room and the music is kind of surrounding your ears, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I definitely appreciate that. And I like the drumming, and I do like the guitar tone and playing. And I think his voice works. It's a voice like, if I got more into it, I'm sure I could actually quite like his voice. I also had to, whilst we were listening to that song, I paused it halfway through and had to look up a video of him, like them playing live, because I wanted to see what he looks like. Because in my mind, I was like, is he a little elf? And it's like, oh no,
he looks like a normal dude. He looks like a normal dude. He's usually has a beard, kind of shaggy brown hair. He's not like particularly, I mean, he's small, but he's not like this little petite, little tiny troll with this crazy high voice.
Some people just have a voice like that. It's crazy. It's impressive. I didn't have tons of thoughts on this, which is annoying in a way. But like, I think it works. It's melodic. Do you know what I mean? It's nice, and it has like that nice kind of, mostly feels like a kind of 6/8 rhythm all the way through, with almost like, it's weird. It sounds like it almost could have been a folk song in a way, because of that kind of 6/8 rhythm lends itself really well to like a 6/8 folk song. But obviously, it's like modern. I don't even know what I would call this. What is it? genre-wise.
it's hard to describe them. They've been described as like post-hardcore, progressive
Yeah.
rock, alternative rock. They are pretty chameleon-like in how they can adapt to a lot of different genres. But I mean, Circus Survive definitely has like a very distinct sound. But there's a lot of little proggy bits on this album. There's some cool like time signature mindfuck events on this album that I really like. But I want to go back to what you said about how this possibly could lend itself to a folk song. I didn't touch on the lyrics in the Imogen Heap song, but even the name of the song, Through the Desert Alone, I love the lyrics in this song, and to me they're a big part of what made me choose it. But I'll read these two verses, and to me, I think it sounds like something Coulter Wall could sing. Like he could convincingly make a cool drama, like cool folk drama out of this. So the lyrics are, I'll become like the desert wind and I'll drink all the gin, shriveled up under desert lights, eaten up in the night. I can't keep this up much longer without needing more from you. I need more. Wasted with the rhythm, angry at the melody. How did you stay so sweet? Because you were my ally once. You were my confidant. I need somebody close to be close to forever. And then it goes into this crazy vague breakdown and stuff. But I just I get the image of this guy dragging himself after some big tragic abandonment or betrayal, just not knowing what to do with his life. And he's just like, all right, packing all my shit up and I'm just wandering through the desert alone. I don't have anybody. You were supposed to be there for me. You abandoned me. And guess I hope I'll survive, pretty much. Thanks for nothing. There's just an energy to this song that really spoke to me at a time when I found this, and I don't know, there's something very pensive and kind of tragic about it, even though the sound of the track to me is a lot more positive and like major and stuff.
That chorus is like huge, isn't it, when it comes in? But the lyrics are, I think the lyrics
kind of glib and sad, you know?
Yeah. I think the lyrics and the chorus is, I think thinking about it now, actually, the chorus does work very well. The lyrics are definitely much more wrought, aren't they? Than like they're more put together and artistic than the Imogen Heap one. Not to say they're better or worse, but it's more of that conscious style.
Yeah.
And that, I think, good lyrics convey something without you actually being able to pin it down precisely. You know, they're not just saying the thing they're trying to say; they convey it. And this is artistic enough that it's actually, you know, they're put together lyrics, but they're not. They could refer to anyone or any time. Like that's when lyrics really become like a bit more universal. When you're like, you know, this song's not written for me, but like it could apply to me or something like that. That's what you kind of want to get from lyrics, and that's I definitely get that sense. Again, like I don't pay super close attention to lyrics. Like I'm a terrible English student. I should never have done that. But I don't think the lyrics personally are the type of lyrics that speak to me much. I think I don't know. It's one of those things like, why do they not? Because these lyrics could be written by Peter Hamill for Graf Generator. They have that vibe at times.
And now, now I need to make like a folk cover of this song, because you kind of have my brain going here. I'm thinking about like, I should pay more attention to lyrics in songs. I actually don't, for as much as I bring them up, but for something like this that I found myself attached to from a sonic perspective, it's cool trying to think about what it would sound like if the very thing that attracted me to it was totally removed and it sounded different. Would I still like the song just as much because the lyrics also speak to me? I have no idea, but that sounds like an experiment to delve into.
Yeah.
So, well, to really throw you off and get into a song that has absolutely ass backwards wild lyrics, I think we should move on to song number 3, which would be Tapestry by Protest the Hero. And so for any longtime listeners, people probably know that Protest the Hero was at one point my absolute favorite band. They've sunken in place to 2 or 3 probably, but still a treasured band of mine. And this song really was the namesake of this show. One of those weird, find a band and a song at the right time in your life kind of tunes. So That's kind of a doozy with lyrics, with style, with everything. So
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
really curious to hear. I mean, this is almost the antithesis of the style of music you tend to listen to, I
yeah,
think.
yeah. So this is one of those songs that I immediately had like a negative reaction to.
Yeah. Oh, and I kind of expected that at this
Yeah,
point.
yeah, yeah. And again, like I really had to like be like, why, Jacob? But why you? Why? What is this? What's going on? Right. So at the start, like the guitar kind of, it could be like it's more like an intense, slightly proggier, like Van Halen. It has that kind of tone to it, which I do, which I like. So I like that. That's cool. It's like jaggedy and like spiky. It's got like a kind of certain particular intensity to it. But even with the drumming at the start, I was like, this could be like some kind of fucked up Van Halen in a way. Because Van Halen are a band I never really got like cool guitar playing and like one or two good songs, and I'm always like, what a weird band. Anyway, that's not the point here. I think this vocal style, it's just not a vocal style that like matches my tastes whatsoever. There's I don't know, yeah, I'll say my general thoughts, and I'll try to come back and examine my reactions to it afterwards. And the drumming style, I'm not a big fan of like the double bass drum thing at all. Like it just doesn't click with me. That kind of ba da 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 bit, I can't emulate that. That is the coolest
Yeah.
part, like
Yeah.
the coolest vocal part, I think, is like again, it's still a vocal style I don't like, but it just suddenly comes out of nowhere, and it's like, okay, that's cool, and it's impressive. I don't know how the hell people do that vocal style.
Well,
It's just super
Rhodey
intense.
Walker, the vocalist of this band, he actually, for all the years he was making music with this band, he actually did damage to his voice. And after their latest album, like to record their latest album that came out last year, he had to essentially get retrained how to sing and scream because he had done so much damage to his voice over the years, doing stuff exactly like this, that he did what he thought was going to be permanent damage. And so if you listen to their 2020 album, Palimpsest, I actually personally, like, I hate to say this, but I hate that album because his voice, like here on the track I played for you, it's just in the sweet spot where I find it endearing, and it took me a while to get used to, but I like it how it is. But when he had to retrain himself to learn how to do vocals, he had to adapt how he performed it to save his voice. And there's something about his voice on the latest album that's just too theatric and too,
Right.
I don't even know how to put my finger on it, but it changed in a way that made me go, oh, I don't like it anymore. Like, like I'm glad he's doing what's best for his voice, but it kind of ruined it for me. And I hate to say that because I respect this band so much. It was just enough. It was just that little, oh, I suddenly liked broccoli and now I don't moment, you know?
Yeah. Vocals are such a specific and personal thing that I've heard. It's like you can hear a song you really love, and then you can hear the same band perform it live, or maybe there's one specific live version I really like on like an album, and then I hear it perform it, and like they just pronounce something differently, or that performance is just slightly off, and you're like, it's actually hitting all the notes right, but you're just like, oh, it's just not right. And
Yes.
vocals more than anything else, it's just so like 3% difference, and you're just like, nope, it's awful now. I hate it. Go away.
I'm so glad to hear someone else say that. Yeah, because I'm thinking, oh God, I mean, I hope at some point, you know, like if Rhodey Walker's out there listening to this, love you, man. But like, you know, I don't think anyone can take that personally. You just go, I don't care for this. That's all. It says nothing about his musicianship or the band's musicianship or whatever. It's just, this is not to my taste now because something about it changed and it doesn't resonate with me anymore, period. That's all there is to say about it.
Yeah. But vocalists are particularly weird because, you know, I always forget there are people out there who don't like Freddie Mercury. And I'm just like, what? Like, it's just so strange to me. It just, I don't know. I thought he was obviously awesome. I'm not even like the biggest fan in the world, but I hear it and I'm like, damn, that voice is insane. But yeah, I'm sure there are people, you might be, I don't know what you think of Freddie Mercury.
No, I don't mind Queen. I really don't mind Queen at all. They're definitely on the tail end of like almost jumping the shark for me, like almost being a little bit too over the top and theatric. And I think if Bohemian Rhapsody,
they probably are too over the top.
yeah, but it's weird. Like it still sits in the okay range for me. Like it's not making my cheese meter go like off the charts. I don't know why. It's not. It doesn't have the campiness that like power metal does for me, where I just can't listen to it. Maybe it's because Freddie's delivery is just very like genuine and fun, and you just know the guy's like a shit hot singer. I don't know what it is about that. I again can't really put a finger on it. We can talk about it till we're blue in the face, and there's really no explanation for it. Yeah.
So yeah,
So
so this song, I don't know, like that double, because it's not all the way through the song. It's just at certain points that double bass drum. It just, I think it's one of the things that stops me from getting into more contemporary, heavier genres a bit more, because I just think it's just, I don't know. I mean, this is the point
is
of
it kind of
this.
is it kind of distracting to you? Maybe.
I do think it is. I think it's, there's a few things. So there's one thing I'm going to say, which I think the people who like the style are going to say, yes, that's the bloody point, Jacob. And I think there's another thing I'll say that people will be like, what? So the first thing is that it just feels like blunt trauma to the head. And I gather that that's the point to some degree.
Well, you haven't listened to Mathcore then. Oh man, should have picked a car bomb song for you, and you'd be like, "Did I just get in a car accident or what?"
But you know that double bass drum, it's just like, and I just feel like this kind of physical presence, like going straight into my brain, and I'm just like, it's just not pleasing. And I do think it's a bit, I don't know, I think it's quite cheesy. I do think it's quite like, I don't know, it's become quite cliched. Like I remember hearing it a lot when I was like 15, 16, 17, when some like heavier genres were a little bit more like commercially viable, I guess. And I just remember hearing it a lot, and it just kind of, for me, it sucks the dynamics out of a lot of songs. And again, it's contingent, isn't it? It's not always the same, and I'm sure there's bad production and good versions of it, but I still hear it, and it still like triggers me instantly. I'm like, oh, I remember not liking it. I still don't like it, and I probably don't give things the time that I should. So I did listen to this bit when I was like, why do I really not like this? And I liked it more like on like repeated listens, because like it's hell of an impressive performance. His vocals at points actually do sound cool, despite me not really liking the style. The drumming isn't just all that kind of thing I don't like. The guitar playing is definitely very cool. The bass playing I really like. There's like that bit, bass comes in quite early with like this big like vibrato that's just like, the vibrato on a bass is just like super intense, because it's just not heard very often.
And I'm so sad that their bassist, I believe it was after this album, he left the band to actually go pursue a career in theater. He now like acts on the stage in Canada. It's kind of cool. But I
Very
believe
cool,
their bassist also was the one who wrote a lot of the lyrics for most of their I can't remember. But that's funny you mentioned the like the blunt force trauma to the head thing though. That is how a lot of their music kind of sounds, but I have to say in this particular song, the lyrics are so bizarre, but to me this song is kind of about, it's largely about like immaturity and feeling like you're king of the world, but in a situation that you would like nobody would want to be considered in charge of. And
Right.
like, you know, growing up, getting older, still making stupid decisions. Like they have the one lyric where he's like, Kev's hair just keeps falling out and Chris just keeps getting fatter. It's just like we're all aging, we're all doing the same stupid shit that we should know better to do by now. And I think the one lyric that repeats, it's always great, is like, this is our Versailles, palace on the swamp. Like, I'm king of the world, except it's king of a shithole. Like But the thing about this track that really hit me when I was, because this came out right before I graduated college, and I was just like so struggling with my place in life and what I wanted to be and who I was. Again, all three of these songs so far, unintentionally, the best part and the most emotional part to me is like the bridge, or the part that's different from everything else. There's a line in the end of this song that says, sometimes a knife right through your heart is exactly what you need. Sometimes the things that you're ashamed of make you who you're supposed to be. And I've brought that up on the show before. I don't know what it is about that. It's so straightforward, but it was so poignant to me. And it comes out of nowhere in this chaotic ballbuster of a song that it's just kind of like, oh, they did have something important to say with all this.
Right.
Here it is.
Yeah, the lyrics are weird with me. I've not. If someone's like, Jacob, what are your favorite lyrics? I would choose. There's a few songs I would choose, but they're not because the lyrics are very meaningful to me on a kind of a meaning level. Sorry, it's a bit repetitive. They're meaningful to me on a kind of abstract. Like I might not know what they're actually saying, but
I feel the same way.
For the most part, I can't like. So there's. Like, I really like Joni Mitchell's lyrics. I really like Kate Bush's lyrics. And there's some, like the Beach Boys are not good lyricists, but there's one song in particular called Surf's Up. Not one of their surf songs, by the way. Doesn't sound like at all what you'd expect. It's unbelievable as a composition. It sounds like it's like borderline classical music. It's just, it's like it comes from a different planet in like 1971 or whatever. It's mad. But the lyrics, I don't think really make grammatical sense. It's just these weird random images strung together. And I'm like, I really like that. And I almost think actually sometimes when I do get lyrics when they are saying something, I'm almost turn my nose up at that. I think I don't know why it's I still like I said I like Joni Mitchell and she does that, I guess. But yeah. I think
Can I
sometimes
ask you?
literal lyrics I can struggle a bit more with.
Yeah, yeah. Can I ask you what your favorite, I guess, genre of literature is? Like, did you have a particular favorite type of poetry or book?
Um Not necessarily. So I really like sci-fi and fantasy a lot. But again, like I have very specific tastes in that, and actually, I'm probably not as widely read within it as a lot of people who are big fans of those genres are, because I'm quite picky about it. Um, there's tons of stuff I love that's just I think I just like bits and pieces from all over the place. I will read like the odd horror story, and I'll read like the odd just anything bits and pieces. There's plenty of short stories I like, but there's very rarely like one author that I really want to go all the way through and read all their stuff. Because when I was at uni, I ended up just going more and more into like literary, looking at like philosophical texts and things like that from like a literary point of view, which is a little bit out of left field in a way. Because I don't know, I started to find that a little bit more interesting at the time. But yeah, I guess my favorite authors, like I really like Herman Melville. It's kind of a boring, easy choice. I always like Tolkien. Tad Williams, I was a big fan of. He's like a kind of fantasy writer who's a big influence on George R. R. Martin, I think.
Oh, okay.
There's a few, I guess. There's some things that again it kind of comes back to the campiness of some of the music I like Van der Graaf Generator. Like H.P. Lovecraft is amazingly fun to read, but would I say he's a good author? I'm not sure. Do you know what I mean? Is
Or a good person, maybe, or whatever.
yeah, definitely not. But there's certain things I've read because I'm like, oh, it just is of its time and it's kind of funny, but also still fun. I don't know. Yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag. I'm a bit all over the place. Shakespeare is obviously really good. It's almost like boring to say Shakespeare is good, but it's just you read it and you're like, oh bloody hell, it's almost like scary.
Yeah, and I was just curious because I wasn't sure if there would be any kind of bleed over into what you like, but it sounds like there is. Then I think that is a great place to close with the fourth song, which to me is kind of the most poetic of the four. As an artist, as an album, this album means everything to me. I listen to this album probably 3 times a month, easily, and this is the album that truly inspired me to want to start playing drums. So keep that in mind. As we listen, but this is Forsaker by Catatonia off Night is the New Day.
From a distance, the name unfamiliar. Spikes reached our heart. Time set for rewind.
All right, we'll pause there because it kind of just repeats for the rest of the song until the most incredible guitar solo. I honestly almost weep every time. It's just incredible. It's so simple, but it's so amazing and it's so effective. But anyway, I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this one because now that I know you don't like double bass, this is some pretty hammer you down heavy hitting stuff until it comes down to the vocals, really.
Yeah, I feel like the bit. I don't. I think the double bass drum in this negatively affects me less than the other one.
Okay.
Like no, I don't.
Okay.
I don't think really is. No, maybe this is a good example where it's a bit, for my taste, better used because it didn't. It didn't feel like so much of an over the top onslaught, if that makes sense. It kind of. Yeah, this track was interesting because, like, vocally, I don't know. I assume they're like Swedish or Norwegian. That's kind of accent.
They are Swedish, yes.
Swedish,
yes.
yeah, right. But there's a few English folk singers that kind of sound similar to that, and they've got like this song is it's kind of a straightforwardly like kind of baritone male voice, isn't it? It's not ridiculous. It's a pretty straightforward vocal. It's not even a metal vocal, really. It's
No, Jonas Ranksy has this kind of soft, like enveloping voice to me, and it is so weird. I think that's what drew me to this band was that I thought, oh, this is metal. Isn't he supposed to be screaming? And I mean, no, yes, Catatonia in their infancy in the 90s, they were a straight up disgusting doom metal band. I mean, it was just like funeral wails over slow chugs. Like, I do not listen to their old stuff. And then they somehow slowly over the years evolved into this kind of progressive, pensive, ambient kind of metal. I don't know. I haven't ever heard a band that's totally like this. And I love it.
The ambient point is interesting because the guitars here are not, they're chugging, they're heavy, but they're almost like textural rather than like, I don't know, then you can't hear like the solidity of a guitar in a way. Like you would not know it's a guitar unless I knew that that's how people play a guitar, because it's this like textural sound rather than an obviously kind of, certainly not traditional kind of heavy guitar sound. It's just kind of there, and like it's not like 'cause it's so incredibly heavy, but there's almost something like enveloping about it. I don't know how to describe it, but it's more of an ambient feel from the instruments at points than it is just like pure like chunky textural guitars. It is textural. I don't know. I'm getting confused.
Yeah,
this is where metaphors fail, right?
Yeah, well, it is hard to describe what it sounds like, but I think there's a general sense of. I have described this band to people who haven't listened to them as like a warm blanket on a cold winter night. Like it's just very, it's edgy and angular in some ways, but it also feels just very kind of melancholy and enveloping. And I don't know if it's the minor key, the tone, the subject matter. I don't know, but they definitely have that kind of dark gothic sound to them. But I think the reverby, lush, textural bits serve that very well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's obviously gothic, and it does feel like you're in a kind of wooden cabin in the middle of some like gothic forest in Sweden.
Yeah,
and it's maybe a bit scary outside, but it's fine inside. You're all right. It's fine. Like you might be a bit scared, like because there's weird shit going on outside, maybe some monster prowling, but actually you're fine. Like you will be fine, but it's still a bit scary. That's the kind of feel I get from this.
Okay. Yeah, I can accept that.
You can accept it, so you don't fully agree. You just accept it.
No, I like it. I don't know how else I would better describe it. It feels like I've always felt Catatonia feels like some just, smoking a cigarette walking down the street at night while it rains. Like there's just something about it, that kind of petrichor quality to it. And I can't quite explain. I mean, the lyrics are pretty simple, rage from a distance, the name unfamiliar, spikes reach the heart, time set for rewind. The dark will rise, abandon your freedom, give up the right to find your true self, forsake your own reasons. It's not, the vocabulary is not particularly intellectual or elevated, if you will, but it's, I don't know. It's just, it kind of hits me. It's just very simple and, sad. They're definitely sad. Like they're the type of band that if I'm feeling depressed or sad, I'm not going to go listen to a band that's sad or depressing. But yet I'll put these guys on if I'm feeling like I want to get in a mode where I want to think about something or I just want to reflect, because there's something about it that just draws me in. I don't know how else to describe it.
Yeah. No, I get it. So sorry, the guitar solo didn't particularly strike me, so I would probably have to hear it again to give my opinion on it. But it sounds like you really love it. Where does it start? I want to give it a fair shot.
It's not a hard guitar solo. Like, I'm sure you could play that if you teach guitar, but there's something really just emotive about it, and the bends, and I guess maybe how he kind of hangs out on those notes that are a little bit dissonant on top of the rest of the chords. I don't know. It's just it's really beautiful to me, but I don't know what it is. It's the broccoli thing again. You just don't know.
Yeah.
I like it.
This could almost fit in on a kind of 70s progressive rock Genesis song, because there's like the guitar, the accompanying guitars are just kind of like playing these arpeggiated pieces they're just kind of, it's like waves of arpeggio. It's just kind of gently crashing over you, whilst there's a kind of melodic guitar solo with like long sustained notes rather than anything particular. Because the guitar player for Genesis, Steve Hackett, wasn't really, I mean, he was technically competent, but he was never like a shredder kind of guy.
Yeah.
But it has a similar vibe with the way, like, it's a nice melodic guitar solo with like these arpeggiated guitar accompaniment. It's definitely nice. It didn't. Again, it's like, I think part of the reason it doesn't affect me that much is like modern like production and everything. I still find like that modern guitar tone. It's just, I don't know. I'm just such a boomer, right? It's just what it comes down to. I can't help it. And again, I think it's part of the drum thing that I don't like on modern stuff. I like to just hear like a really, I guess it's like a comparatively dry like snare sound as well. Like, for rock drumming, I really like Mitch Mitchell on the Jimi Hendrix Experience stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just like so snare heavy, and it's like that's where like a lot of the funk comes from. And I don't know, maybe I'm just used to that drier, straightforward drum sound. That kind of wetter, more contemporary drum sound doesn't work for me as well. And I think sometimes it does. I mean, like contemporary guitar sounds for the most part sound a bit more artificial, don't they? And I don't use that as like an inherently pejorative thing, although I also don't like it. So maybe it's a weird one because, it is very similar to lots of things that I like, but something about the production is just like, I don't know. It could just...
Yeah, I really enjoy the drum production on this album because maybe unlike you where you want that big fat dry snare, I love that I think it's Daniel Lilikovist. I always mispronounce his name. He was their former drummer. His drum choices on this album in particular, I love. He uses so many accent cymbals, uses a lot of ride. There's just a lot of sonic color in his drumming, and I love that. And I think the mix brings that out. But if you're expecting the kind of big forefront rock drumming sound, you're not going to get that on this album. It's just not what they're all about. And that's okay.
I think this is probably my second favorite song on here, though. I think it's a good song. It's well written and it's nice. I like the understated vocals, and the way it fits together. For me, I think, it's just, for me, the only thing I would really fault about this is the modern production, which just is always going to be like, oh, damn, it's a shame. It's always like, oh, it's a shame it sounds, oh, God, if only it wasn't the 60s again. Oh,
Get off my lawn.
For people listening, I am only 30 years old, by the way.
I was going to say, we're the same age and we are coming at this from two totally different perspectives. But hey, that is why this actually has taught me a lot about kind of why I do my show and maybe why you do your show. I think we're increasingly living in a world where it is harder to just say agree and disagree. And I mean, when it comes to human rights disagreements and things like that, I get why people go, okay, we can't be friends if you think, you want to like kill me and my family or something. But I think it's just becoming harder and harder to actually have a debate about a lot of things that aren't so grossly black and white, and people are looking for, I think we've lost touch with that sense of like communication and just honestly friendly debate, just examining the pros and cons of your side versus my side. And I think with art, because it is so subjective, this kind of fills a hole for me where I can go, hey, I can express my opinion and it doesn't have to be what you like, but I'm going to say it anyway.
Yeah,
So
yeah, definitely.
to put a bow on that, I actually think this is kind of the drum roll to the big, okay, what was the point of this exercise? Kind of like, why did I choose these 4 songs? When I actually go back and look through the lyrics and the tone and like re-examine why I picked these, I think there's this underlying sense of healing from abandonment in all of them. The like through the desert alone, you know, the guy's going through the desert, some big thing happened, he felt like he you know, his partner or whatever, they couldn't be relied on anymore. In closing in, she's talking about, you know, what are you like, where did you get to, no word, no nothing, you didn't hold me for any longer, did you walk for the fear of love or don't you believe enough? Well, I'll cover both of us, you can leave that to me. And same with Forsaker as well. Abandon your freedom, give up the right to find your true self. And lastly, with Tapestry, he talks about sometimes the knife right through your heart is exactly what you need. Sometimes the things you're ashamed of make you who you're supposed to be. So I don't know why that's been the circular thread here, but it's the feeling like I have to at all costs seek out what it is that I need to be and what I need to do and quit worrying about relying on other people. You know, you've got this, but you have to fill your life with the people who are going to value your path no matter what. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. No.
I like it. Yeah, no, that's cool.
That's my English lit take on these 4 songs.
Yeah, no, I do like them. I like. Well, I'd say I'd say I like 3 of them, and the Tapestry one, I kind of do want to like it. The song is called Tapestry by Protest the Hero. I just there's nothing wrong with it, but it is just one of those. It's like, yeah, I just don't. Sorry, dude. Just the voice,
All
the
good
drumming,
with me.
it just. But the Imogen Heap one was cool. The Catatonia, that was cool. And Circus Survive is his voice again. I think his voice alone is worth the price of admission, which is free, I guess, because you can listen to it for free online. But yeah, even the Tapestry one, that Versailles line is, there's like a lift, isn't there? It's like it does suddenly get very anthemic, and it's almost like the Circus Survive level anthemicness, but it's not quite. I mean, they're all cool. It's just,
Well,
I'm just always going to be a boomer.
it's okay. Thank you for suffering through them with me. And that's the beauty of it. You can take 4 songs I love and you could tell me you hated every single one of them and I would still be having just as much fun as I am right now. So that's the point of this whole show. But I love that we thought we weren't going to have enough stuff to talk about, and this is going to end up being one of my longest episodes ever. So in the interest of keeping it, no, don't apologize. In the interest of keeping it under 2 hours, I guess, let's get to the last couple questions, I guess. I do always like to ask people, regardless of if they're just a music fan or music listener, or in a band or whatever, what you think defines success as a creative.
Ooh, as in what? How would I define my own success?
Yeah, you could answer that personally, or just what you think success means.
Oh yeah, I don't know. I mean, ultimately, it's just creating good art, and that's obviously subjective. So it still doesn't really answer the question. But for me personally, I would be, if I could just not work a full-time job and do this instead. You know, if it was replacing my current wage and no more, that would be completely sufficient. That would be completely enough. You know, who cares about being a millionaire? I mean, I would love to be a millionaire, but you know, ultimately, that would be. You know, if I got to that point, I would deem myself successful, and I hope I'd be able to do that without compromising on what I actually think is good and what I want to do. That is the kind of dream I think most people would agree on that with some level. Like, you know, you don't need to have like #1 albums or whatever, but if I'm just doing something musical, you know, whether that's teaching or my podcast or video essays, YouTube, or writing my own songs or my band or whatever it was, just, or a combination of them, if that was enough to just, I don't need to work full time. then I enjoy it enough that would just keep me going. And yeah, I think that's how I would define it.
Good answer. If you had a chance to sit down with any artist, alive or dead, and ask them a few questions, who would you choose and what would you ask?
I don't know. I don't think I would.
Really?
I don't think so. Yeah. Um. Maybe I'll talk to Tolkien about something. Yeah, that would be cool. Like if this
Oh,
isn't
and
even music, just because.
yeah.
I mean, when I was a kid, I was full. I mean, I read Lord of the Rings so many times. I had all the maps of Middle Earth like an encyclopedia. Read the Silmarillion over and over again. I got like The Hobbit. We had like an audiobook when I was too young to read The Hobbit. Got like a graphic, everything. I shouldn't go on and on because it's just everything that was Tolkien related. And when the films came out, I was like, oh my god, this is amazing.
Yeah.
The Hobbit films are crap, but that's fine. But yeah, I think it's because he'd be a bit more interesting. Not that the other people that musicians that I love wouldn't be interesting, but I feel like Tolkien, because there's so much thought about how things were put together, and it's so like academic, that it would just be an interesting conversation. And I think he was just kind of an odd dude in a way that we don't really account for these days. It's like, he's the father of like modern fantasy, but he was also like a conservative Catholic, but with like attitudes
really?
towards like environmentalism that were like quite forward thinking in a way. I mean, the guy was born in like the 1880s, and he insisted that everyone should only sing in Latin at church and things like that. And he was very old timey and backwards in a way, but I think fundamentally, like, he was a good guy. But he's a product of his time, and I think it should be interesting. I think the reason at first I said no one is because I don't really. This again comes to back to my irreverent approach even to the stuff I love. I'm not like hero. I'm not hero driven, and I think it's actually a bit gross. I think it's quite often a bit parasocial, the relationships we can have with, there's some people that I've read loads and loads about, and we all have those moments where you're like obsessed with someone, you just want to find out everything about someone or all the music they've done or read the entire Wikipedia page or whatever. But I think it's sensible to kind of step back and take them off the pedestal a bit, because sorry, this is a bit of distraction, but I was arguing with a friend the other day. She came around to dinner and she was talking about, she's a huge Queen fan. And I'm like a big Queen fan as well, don't get me wrong. But she's like, Queen are the only band who, where every single member wrote a number one hit. And I was like, but that's not actually true. That's just what the songwriting credits say. Like, they didn't solely write the number one hit. For example, Roger Taylor didn't write Radio Gaga all by himself. And she's like, but it says that on the writing credits. And it's this like mythology around the band. It's one of like, you see it, like there's tons of Reddit threads. I've seen it for years. Just like, Queen are the only band where every individual band member wrote a number one hit. Just not true, because the song was actually co-written by Freddie Mercury and all the other people. And it's just him who gets the songwriting credit. Just Roger Taylor gets the songwriting credit because that's the arrangement they had. And it's like, these brilliant musicians are all mortals. Like, they're brilliant because they've put the work in. And maybe they do have some weird talent, like someone's vocal range is just unbelievable, or someone has this particular talent for like words or whatever. But like, they're all mortals, and that's why I like to take the irreverent approach, because there's still things to laugh about them, and there's ridiculous stuff, and they've all put out something which is just crap. It doesn't matter who they are, they've just put something out which is just absolute nonsense, and you hear it and you think, this is terrible. How did they do this? And I don't know. So that's why my long answer to your question.
That's great, though. I really agree with the whole, like, it's almost parasocial how you said it, to just worship people. And but to each their own, I guess. I mean, hero worship and blah blah blah. Like, I mean, I've been known to fangirl over certain things, but I'm never gonna do it to the point that it's like invading that person's life. Like, you just sometimes people create art and music that resonates with you so much it feels like it was written just for you, and that's not a reason to go like stalk them or try to become more to them than you're a listener. I mean, if you happen to make a good genuine connection with an artist you really admire, that's great and good for you, but it's not supposed to be the goal, I don't think. So, well, Jacob, then I must ask you my last question. Of course, if you could only listen to 3 albums for the rest of your life, what would they be?
Oh wow. Okay. This is a hard one. I don't think I've ever thought about this because in the UK we have this radio show on one of our it's called BBC Radio 4 called Desert Island Discs, and they basically ask that question.
Oh, nice.
I think you get to choose 4 or 5 or something. I don't know. I don't really listen to it, but it's like a national institution, this radio show. Anyway, so I would choose Close to the Edge by Yes. And I love it. It's 3 songs. One of them is 18 minutes and the other 2 are like 10 minutes long. And it's wild. It's absolutely wild. I think it's brilliant. I would probably choose like The Hounds of Love by Kate Bush, maybe.
I still need to listen to that album all the way through. I've heard bits and pieces of it.
It's very eccentric. It's Kate Bush. And maybe, I don't know. My next one is surprisingly from this millennium.
Wow.
Post 2000. They're a kind of, I don't know what it's kind of trad folk combined with like post rock called the Olam, like OLLAM, like entirely instrumental. And it's just like tons of like Irish flute and stuff like that. But like with like contemporary kind of drum beats, and like the song structures are very like post rock. I really like that. It's a great album. It's their debut album called The Olam. Or The Olam. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, to be honest. I've only ever read it. It's very cool. It's very, very cool. But that one specifically is kind of a driving like album. So as long as I'm not on a desert island, like it's Desert Island Disc, as long as it's like 3 albums and I get to live my life and drive around in a car, because that's perfect driving.
That's how I always treat it. Yeah,
Okay,
because
cool.
I think people assume that I mean if you're stuck on a desert island and you have access to nothing else. To me, I always envision the question of just like, I really don't care where you are or what you're doing. I just want to know what 3 albums are most meaningful to you if you were stuck with them. But some people are like, well, I'm going to do a double album then because I'll have more music. So I keep it open-ended, but either way.
My potential third choice was going to be Live and Dangerous by Thin Lizzy, who, because the studio albums are pretty weak because they could never get the production together. It sounded flat, but then a lot of these songs, they played it live, and it's a double album, and it's a live album. So it's basically a double live greatest hits, which is totally cheating, but it's really good. Like they're just a brilliant live band, and they're just like straightforward rock and roll, but just like perfect guitar solo after perfect guitar solo, great riffs. The singing is just like, it's not the most melodic singing in the world, but it's just like really cool. I just like it. It's just straightforward rock and roll. So that's my that's my cheeky cheating fourth choice.
I love it. Well, hey, this I was honestly a little worried about how this interview was going to go, because I thought, how are we going to do the music stuff and blah blah blah, and then an hour and a half later, here we are. This has actually been really fun, and I appreciate you giving your intelligent insight to everything. It is nice to geek out a little bit with this type of stuff. So again, thanks for being on the show. Thanks for giving me your time. Hopefully you have a pub trip planned after this for your afternoon.
Oh, thanks for having me.
All right, well, this was a little bit different, like I said, but, I think Jake was a pretty smart, pretty well-cultured guy, so hopefully you enjoyed his opinions, and maybe this is just proof that 2 people can have entirely different music tastes and still get along. So I realized in the intro I didn't focus as much on his actual folk band. This is Between the Breaks. That's what he mentioned before, so if you want to stay tuned to what they're up to, you can search them on Bandcamp. I believe it is betweenbreaks.bandcamp.com, or just search for Between the Breaks. They're from Bristol. And also go follow his podcast, Underrated, Overhated, on all the streaming platforms of your choice, as well as follow his YouTube channel under BigYellowPraxis, as you will see in the episode artwork. As always, thanks for listening.
Hangs from a branch and falls down.